My name is Dave Sanderson. I'm here speaking today for Leadership Waterloo. I came to Waterloo because number one, I was invited, which was very nice. But second, I really wanted to share a message not only about the miracle on the Hudson, but about hope and leadership and teamwork and how all those moments in your life that you really don't think matter, they really are in your life for a reason and a purpose. So on January 15, 2009, I was one of the last passengers off the plane that crashed into the Hudson River, better known as the Miracle on the Hudson. I was the last person off the back of the plane, one of the last passengers off the plane. Well, once the plane was going down and everybody knew it was going down, it was pretty quiet because I think people were resolved that probably things weren't going to work out really well. But once the plane got down into the river, the other issue that came into play was water coming inside the plane. And that's when the term that I used that night in the media was controlled chaos, where no one was pushing everybody, no one was losing control, but there were things moving pretty quickly because the water's entering the plane very rapidly at that time. What was going on in my mind, there were different times when my mind shifted. Number one, getting out of the plane was first focused on just getting out of the plane, but then I heard my mother speak to me, if you do the right thing, that God will take care of you. So my goal was, I knew I was all right. I didn't know if anybody else in the back needed help, so that's why I went towards the back of the plane. And once I got going out of the plane, there was no room on the wing or the boat for me, so that's why I was inside the plane holding on to the little lifeboat for approximately 6 to 7 minutes after that. So at that point in time, I was just focused on getting out of the plane, but there were a lot of things happening around. So it came to the reason I got out of the plane when I did is when I felt the plane shift. And I found out later it's because a tugboat hit the plane. And when he was backing out, and he was doing what he was doing, backing out. But I felt water going up my back, and all I could think about is Titanic. As the movie sort of in my mind is, if you're inside, you go straight down to the bottom. And I said, don't be stuck in a plane. That's when I jumped in and swam to the closest boat, which happened to be the end of that wing, and which was amazing enough to me, because candidly, I'm a very good swimmer, but you know, in that kind of water, it was pretty dicey. But then for me, you know, I still had to get on the ferry, and fortunately I had a couple people help me get on the ferry because I couldn't climb the ladder. So it was, there were different times and different experiences, all the way through to the triage center, all the way through to the hospital, all the way till I got home that next day. There was a moment when I didn't think I was going to make it. There were a couple moments. Number one, once he said brace for impact, this is your captain, brace for impact. I didn't think that we were probably going to come back, but the second time I didn't think I was going to make it was when I was on the ferry, and I couldn't feel anything. I was just so cold, and I thought I survived it, but I'm not going to make it because I was so cold. And until somebody sort of shook me and told me to call my wife, which at that point I knew I was alive. But I think that was another moment that sort of I didn't think I was probably going to. I probably have a different outcome. Leadership means to me is somebody who can give direction and give the mission and fulfill the mission. What I mean by that is, and one of the great lessons from the Miracle on the Hudson was, you know, there's a lot of leaders on that plane, but sometimes leaders have to check their ego at the door and let other people who have better skill sets do it, but always remain focused on the mission. And so when I talk about leadership, I talk more about personal leadership skills such as awareness or persistence and faith. But I think true leaders are the ones who have that visionary look, can set the mission and help people keep focusing on the mission so they can do the jobs they need to do to achieve it. One of my first mentor, Bill, asked me when I was with him back in the early 90s, is do you want to be in charge or do you want to be in control? And there's no wrong answer. But he told me his perspective, true leaders focus on being in charge and letting go of the control. And that's one of the toughest things for leaders to do, because managers want control. Leaders want to be in charge of making the call. So that was a great lesson I learned a long time ago, which I learned many times since. One of the things you realize when you're in a plane crash going down, you have no control. And you know, you think you have control, but you have no control. The only thing you control is your mind. And that's why I talk about one of the key strategies that I used and I learned from being with Tony Robbins all those years.
I'm really proud of a dear, dear friend of mine by the name of Dave Sanderson. I'm sure many of you saw today, if you watched the news, everyone saw the Miracle on the Hudson, as they called it. You know, Dave's a father and he's got family, but he stayed on that plane. He was the last one off that airplane. He was being interviewed tomorrow morning, I know, by Good Morning America. But he was the last one on the airplane, and his off the airplane, making sure everybody got off, making sure these children got on the lifeboat, holding the lifeboat back against the plane. But he had the coolness within his head to say, okay, I'm going to find a way to help people and serve, make sure everybody gets off healthy and safe, risked his own life to do it. Even when he could barely function, made sure other people's lives were being saved and supported. So love you, Dave.
How to manage my state, how to manage my mind. And there's 3 primary ways to do that: through your physiology, with your internal dialogue, and what you focus on. And I couldn't jump up and down and move my physiology, but what I did is the questions I kept saying to myself and the things I was saying, it was more of a positive aspect. If this happens, even if I don't come back, I'm going to be in a better place. So my internal dialogue was helping me manage my state that day. But then, of course, there are other times when I had to go into physiology mode. I had to move my body. So the managing of state is a key aspect of, I think, when you don't think you have control, the one thing you can control is this, because no one can get in there unless you let them in there. In my book, Moments Matter, the one thing I talk about is the power of rituals. And I learned this from great leaders, because one of the things that I try to do is model great leaders. One of the things that Tony taught me is put yourself in proximity, because proximity is power. And it used to be you had to be up close and personal with somebody, but now you can be with proximity on the internet, on Facebook, on social media. There's so many ways to be a proximity, right? So I study what great leaders do, and most great leaders have rituals in the morning. And I put rituals together where the first thing I did is, even this morning, I got up extremely early, and I did my physical body first. I prayed, and then my physical body first, because that ritual sets me up for the day. And I've already done my meditation. I've done my taking care of my body, because one of the things I realized, and I saw this happen at a Tony Robbins event, when a lady actually got up and started praying for Tony's health. And I've never heard anybody pray for somebody's health. But that told me something. If you don't have your health, you can't serve. So that's why my second ritual is taking care of my body next. And even before I came in this morning, I spent 45 minutes making sure my body was ready to go so I could serve today at a high level. I pray every day, but I think when it started resonating with me, and I'll tell you when it happened. I was on the executive board of our church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we were going through some interesting times, and we were having a meeting, and the meeting wasn't going really well, and our minister, who's now a bishop in our church, was there, and I said, Ken, every day in Jesus' life wasn't pixie dust and sunshine. Jesus had some bad days. What did Jesus do when he had a bad day? He goes, what Jesus would do, he'd go out back and he would pray. He said that would center him to be able to serve. And I said, well, if it's good enough for Jesus, success leaves clues, right? So that's why I think the power of prayer for me is, even when I was going down, I was praying, right, in the plane, because, either I was going to end up here or I was going up to a better place, right? And I want to make sure both were covered. And how do you do that? You pray. I've really expanded what I'm trying to do now, because I really wanted to get the message out about 2 different areas. Number one is definitely around leadership and cultivating personal leadership, because a lot of people talk about corporate leadership, which is important, but I talk about these leadership skills that you have to have inside yourself to be able to lead yourself first before you lead other people. But the second thing I'm really passionate about is how to grow from a traumatic life event. And that's why I did my TED Talk at Queen's University in Kingston. It's called post-traumatic growth syndrome. The strategies to grow from a traumatic life event instead of going to PTSD or depression. And that came about because I was interviewed for AARP magazine, and they gave me this term, and I never knew what the term meant, but we did the interview, and I started looking and studying it. I'm like, there are strategies on how you can grow from these things instead of going to a depressed state like so many people do. So that's why now not only do I speak, I do workshops. I have my own radio show on Contact Talk Radio called Moments Matter with Dave Sanderson. I have a podcast on C-Suite Radio. I've got a daily flash briefing on Amazon right now called Dave Sanderson Declassified. I'm trying to get these messages out on a lot of different platforms. And that's, so I'm really expanded the way I'm trying to get the message out. I sensed a lot of pride today in the room. I think people were, number one, happy to be here. They wanted to be here. I felt that they wanted to be here because the weather is not really rosy out right now. But second, there are so many leaders in this community on different levels, whether they were political leaders, first responder leaders, leaders in industry, leaders in business, and I felt that they all wanted to be together, and they took pride in, number one, the area, where they're from, and they pride in what's going on in this part of Canada. The reason people should be involved is the reason I got involved in some different areas, because I mentioned before, proximity is power. Getting yourself around people with a same mindset. That's why I believe in the power of having a mastermind. This is like when I look at leadership on Waterloo is it's a big mastermind group. For 1 year, you can mastermind with other leaders and learn skill sets from everybody else and bringing it together. The power of bringing all these different opinions and processes together. That's why I'm involved with a mastermind group out of Nashville, Tennessee, because I need people around me to elevate me and challenge me, and this is what I think Leadership Waterloo does. I think respecting the process, what that means to me is there, and I'll throw a like into some of the interesting conversations I've had with maybe millennials or other people, because a lot of the people I'm seeing now want to jump through the process. And they think they can get outcome very quickly if they just go to YouTube, or if they or they work for somebody that things aren't working out, they just leave the company. One thing I learned is there's a process. You got to put your time in. I just did a blog this week called "Don't Waste Reps," because a lot of people want to waste the reps. They just go through because they want to get to the outcome first. And candidly, I was that way too. And the reason I went to the first seminar I went to, and my mentor Bill told me to, is because I wanted to cut the process. Right? I wanted to fast track this thing. There's not really a fast track to success. And part of that is you got to put yourself around the right kind of people in the right peer groups. And that's what Leadership Waterloo does, is basically allow people to come together of like mindset who want a common outcome and challenge each other and be challenged.